So Q of Day26, they were on Making the Band 4. He has finally come out and had a conversation about why he was so upset and crying in a lot of his interviews, talking about Diddy and that whole conversation. Yeah. And he is making some really huge allegations against Dawn.
We've reached a moment where the walls aren't just closing in, they're crumbling in real time, and the people who once stood behind Sean Diddy Combs are now scrambling to distance themselves before the next revelation drops. This isn't just another round of allegations resurfacing. This is a live wire sparking new confessions, deleted statements, and a credibility war that's playing out publicly as federal prosecutors circle closer. At the center of it all, a harrowing account from Quay Mosley of Day26, who didn't just accuse Diddy of orchestrating a night of violation. He named his ex-girlfriend, Dawn Richards, as the one who allegedly handed him the pill that sent him into a blackout. And then, just as the story exploded, Dawn's denial vanished from the internet.
I was going crazy, bro, trying to figure out, what's going on. And the things that I was feeling are coming to light now, and I'd be like, whoa, that had to be God, intervening and removing me from that situation, because it could have got really, really bad.
Let's be clear about the stakes here. Kye isn't some anonymous voice in a crowd of accusers. He's a former protege of Diddy's, a member of a group molded by the bad boy machine, and his story isn't just about one night in the Hamptons. It's about a system. In a tearful interview with Vlad TV, he described waking up in the twin daughter's basement bedroom, cameras rolling, his body reacting in terror. It felt very sacrificial, he said, a phrase that doesn't just describe fear, but implies something far more calculated. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a party gone wrong. This, according to Kye, was a setup, and the fact that Dawn Richards, someone he trusted, someone he later introduced to his family, is now at the heart of it, makes the betrayal that much sharper. But here's where it gets even messier. Dawn didn't just deny it. She posted a statement calling the claims categorically false, then deleted it within hours. That's not the move of someone confident in their innocence. That's the move of someone who realizes the ground is shifting beneath them.
ABC News Live reports Sean Diddy Combs is facing new assault allegations. The LA Sheriff's Department says that it's investigating a report from an alleged victim in Florida. That alleged victim has identified himself as music producer Jonathan Hay in social media posts that have since been removed. A spokesperson for Combs has not responded to ABC News' request for comment.
And the ground is shifting. Diddy isn't just fighting lawsuits anymore. He's facing a federal trial in May 2025 on charges of racketeering, trafficking, and conspiracy. Allegations that paint him not as a music mogul, but as the architect of a decades-long operation. Q's account doesn't exist in a vacuum. It lands alongside a growing pile of testimony from former associates, security staff, and even A-list names who've hinted at the darker side of Diddy's empire. Usher, who lived with Diddy as a teenager, has described very curious things happening in that household. Things a 13-year-old shouldn't have seen. Justin Bieber, who spent his own 48-hour stretch with Diddy at 15, is now untangling himself from anyone connected to the scandal, unfollowing Usher and scrubbing old ties. And then there's the email. The one Day26 claims they received, the one Quay says left him so unnerved he warned his family. If I go missing, this is why. Cryptic references to sacrifices, a tone that made grown men break down on camera. That email hasn't been made public, but the fact that multiple members of the group independently recall its chilling effect suggests it wasn't just paranoia, it was a warning. Now, let's talk about Dawn Richards. Her statement wasn't just a denial, it was a carefully worded defense that unraveled the second she hit delete. She claimed that if Kye truly believed she'd sedated him, his later actions, inviting her into his home, introducing her to his sisters, wouldn't make sense. But trauma doesn't follow logic. Survivors often maintain relationships with their abusers, especially when those abusers are tied to power structures they can't escape. And let's not forget, Dawn was part of Diddy's inner circle. She wasn't just a bystander, she was in the room where these things allegedly happened. Her sudden backtrack isn't just about Quay, it's about self-preservation. Because if Quay's story holds up under scrutiny, it doesn't just implicate Diddy. It pulls her into the same legal jeopardy. And with federal investigators already digging into Diddy's operations, every deleted tweet, every retracted statement starts to look like an admission of guilt.
That he has, with others, and just because no one else has been charged, which normally in a RICO case, you would have others charged. It was a statute designed to get mob bosses. Trying to get at criminal behavior that's like a web of criminal behavior that you can't necessarily prove, like the one thing or the statute of limitations expired on the other thing, but you're just showing this bad guy who's operating what's clearly an enterprise that over and over engages in criminal problems or criminal acts.
But here's the question that should keep us all up at night. If Quay is telling the truth, how many others were part of this? We're not talking about one bad night. We're talking about a pattern. The white parties, the freak-offs, the stories from security staff who say they were sent on missions to recruit young women for after-hours gatherings, the lawsuits from men and women who say they were coerced, filmed, or worse. And now, with Diddy's trial looming, the cracks in the foundation are turning into canyons. Insiders claim his legal team is in chaos. Former allies are flipping. And the tapes, let's not forget the tapes, are still out there, waiting to surface. Q's account might be the most damning yet because it doesn't just describe abuse. It describes a process, a method. And if there's a method, there are more victims. Meanwhile, Diddy's defense is crumbling under the weight of his own legend.
And what's really going to be interesting is the parade of celebrities who we expect to be mentioned and or called into that courtroom. You know, people who we hadn't heard about prior, like Mike Myers, you know, Austin Powers, Mike Myers. Why is he getting called? Why is he on the witness list? That'll be fascinating. And then, of course, there are the no-name, quote unquote, women who are going to have to find every ounce of courage they have.
For years, he cultivated an image of untouchable power, the king of New York, the man who could summon A-listers with a wink, the architect of careers. But kings don't get raided by the FBI. Kings don't have their sons let out in handcuffs. Kings don't watch as their former protégés break down on national television, describing nights that sound less like parties and more like rituals. And yet, even now, with the walls closing in, there's a sense that we haven't seen the worst of it. Because if Quay's story is true, it means Diddy wasn't just preying on strangers. He was targeting people in his own circle, people he'd groomed, people who trusted him. And that changes everything. Let's not pretend this is just about one man's downfall. The music industry is watching this unfold with a mix of horror and calculation. Every artist who ever orbited Diddy's world is now asking the same question. What did I see? What did I ignore? Usher's already distanced himself. Justin Bieber's scrubbing his social media. Even Jay-Z, who stayed silent through most of this, has to be sweating. Because if the feds are building a racketeering case, they're not just looking at Diddy, they're looking at everyone who enabled him. And that list is long. The parties, the after parties, the private jets, the NDAS, the whispers that were always there, always dismissed as just how the industry works. Well, the industry's not working anymore, not like this. And then there's the timing.
The feds, Al Capone style, have not charged everything under the sun. They've charged 3 main charges: racketeering, trafficking, and the transport of a. And I'll tell you, I don't know about the racketeering charge. It's pretty sweeping, and I'll tell you what the general elements are.
Quay's interview dropped as Diddy's legal team is scrambling to suppress evidence ahead of trial. Sources say prosecutors have tapes, actual footage, from the Hamptons estate. If those tapes exist, and if they show what QA describes, this isn't just a criminal case. It's a cultural reckoning. Because we're not just talking about one night in a basement. We're talking about a machine that allegedly used substances, coercion, and the promise of fame to control people. A machine that, according to multiple lawsuits, didn't just exploit adults. It targeted the young, the vulnerable, the ones who thought they were getting a shot at the dream. And if that machine is real, then every artist who ever passed through it has to wonder, was I next? Was I already part of it without knowing? But here's what we can't ignore. Kay isn't the first to speak out, and he won't be the last. The dam has broken. Cassie Ventura's lawsuit was the first domino. Then came the raids, then the federal charges, then the documentaries, then the emails, then the tapes, and now the inner circle is turning on itself. Don Richards' deleted statement isn't just a retraction. It's a signal that the story they've all been telling themselves, that this would stay buried, isn't true anymore. And if the people closest to Diddy are starting to panic, we should be asking, what do they know that we don't? Because this isn't just about Quay versus Don versus Diddy.
It felt very scary and weird to where I ran to get help. I ran to my doctor. I spoke up with my family. I spoke up to people around me because I was like, if this is true, and I'm caught missing or something, I want you guys to know facts and the truth of what I'm going through and experiencing.
This is about a system that's been operating in plain sight for decades, and systems like that don't collapse quietly. They collapse messily, with lawsuits, with leaked footage, with former friends turning state's evidence, with names we never expected to hear dragged into the light. And if the past few weeks have taught us anything, it's that we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. The question isn't whether more is coming, it's how much more, and who's going down with the ship. And that's when the texts started coming in, the ones no one was supposed to see. The texts weren't just coming in, they were coming from people who'd spent years in Diddy's orbit, people who'd seen things they couldn't unsee, and now, with the federal news tightening, they were finally hitting send. Quay's interview didn't just open a wound, it ripped the scab off a system that had been festered in silence for decades. And at the heart of that system, a culture of control so ingrained that even the victims sometimes became the enforcers. Dawn Richards wasn't just an ex-girlfriend caught in the crossfire. She was a former bad boy artist, a woman who'd risen through the same machine that allegedly broke Q. Which begs the question, was she a pawn, a participant, or both? Because in Diddy's world, the lines between those roles were always blurred, by contracts, by fear, and by the unspoken rule that loyalty wasn't optional. It was the price of survival. Let's talk about how that loyalty was enforced.
In the moment, it just felt like, what? Like, is this fun for him? Is this like a test?
We've heard the stories about the white parties, the all-white dress code, the A-list guest lists, the reputation as the most exclusive ticket in entertainment. But what we haven't dug into enough is what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. Multiple lawsuits now describe these events as hunting grounds, where the sparkling beverage was allegedly spiked, the doors locked, and the rules simple: play along or disappear. Q's account of waking up in that basement bedroom, disoriented and filmed, mirrors the experiences of others who've come forward. Adria English, a former adult film star, claimed in her lawsuit that she was groomed into trafficking at these same parties, where the drinks were laced and refusal wasn't an option. A security guard who worked at the 2006 white party told investigators he saw Diddy take 2 underage girls into a private room, and they didn't emerge for 24 hours. These aren't isolated incidents. They're a blueprint. And if Quay's story is true, it means Dawn Richards wasn't just in the room when it happened. She was allegedly handing out the pills. Now consider the power dynamics at play. Diddy didn't just control careers, he controlled lives. Cassie Ventura's lawsuit detailed how he allegedly monitored her movements, dictated her relationships, and threatened her family if she tried to leave. Usher, who lived with Diddy as a teenager, has described walking in on scenes no 13-year-old should ever see. And Justin Bieber? The resurfaced clips of him joking about 48 hours with Diddy take on a sinister edge when you remember he was 15 at the time. These weren't just parties, they were auditions, for compliance, for silence. And for those who played along, the rewards were immense. Record deals, Lamborghinis, access to the inner circle. But the moment someone stepped out of line, the machine turned against them. Quay's decision to speak out now isn't just brave, it's a calculated risk. Because in Diddy's world, the consequences for betrayal have always been severe, and that's where the federal raids come in.
She saw no way out other than doing what he told her to do. He had mentally controlled her. It's like a pimp. Diddy had pimp potential. He had her mind messed up where it controlled her.
When agents stormed Diddy's LA and Miami homes in March 2024, they weren't just looking for evidence. They were sending a message. The seizures included hard drives, phones, and what sources describe as a significant quantity of controlled substances. But the real prize? The tapes. Insiders claim prosecutors have footage from the Hamptons estate, the same location where Quay says he was sedated and filmed. If those tapes exist, and if they show what witnesses describe, this isn't just a criminal case anymore. It's a full-blown exposure of how the industry's elite operated in the shadows. And it's not just Diddy who should be worried. It's everyone who ever attended those parties, everyone who ever looked the other way, everyone who ever benefited from the silence. But here's the thing about systems like this. They only work as long as everyone stays quiet. And right now, the quiet is shattering. Kay's interview was the first domino. Then came the documentaries, like Diddy, Hiding in Plain Sight, which laid out the patterns of abuse with chilling precision. Then the former employees started talking, describing missions to recruit young women for after-hours gatherings. Then the lawsuits piled up, each one adding another layer to the same horrifying picture. And now, with Diddy's trial looming, the pressure is mounting. Because if Quay's story is credible, it means there are others, lots of others, who know exactly what happened in those rooms. And some of them are starting to realize that their silence might be more dangerous than speaking up. Let's not forget the financial leverage Diddy wielded like a weapon.
He seemed to be taking this kind of matter seriously. Now, I will just kind of preface it and say it. I haven't seen the documentary, but it's not out of the realm, or it's not out of the norm that she even went on this documentary as well, too, because she had previously gone on another documentary and kind of talked about her client's accusations against Diddy as well, too. So I was surprised that they brought up this particular documentary. Again, I don't know the extent of what she had said, but the defense seemed very annoyed in a way. And
artists signed to Bad Boy didn't just owe him their careers, they owed him everything. Cassie's lawsuit claims she was forced to sign over her publishing rights, her masters, even her home. DAY26 has spoken openly about how they were left penniless despite their success. Their earnings mysteriously vanished into the label's coffers. And then there were the NDAS, ironclad agreements that ensured anyone who left the fold did so without a word. But here's the problem with NDAS. They only work if people are too scared to break them. And right now, the fear is shifting. The raids, the arrests, the fact that Diddy's own sons were let out in handcuffs. It's all sending a clear signal. The protection is gone. The king is in chains. And the people who stayed silent for years are suddenly recalculating the risks. Which brings us back to Dawn Richards. Her deleted statement wasn't just a retraction, it was a tell. Because if she truly had nothing to hide, why erase the denial? Why not double down? The answer is simple. She knows what's coming, and she's not the only one. Sources close to the investigation say prosecutors are flipping witnesses, offering immunity to lower-level players in exchange for testimony against Diddy. That means the people who once enforced the silence are now the ones most likely to break it. And if they start talking, the dominoes won't just fall. They'll collapse in an avalanche. Because this isn't just about one night in the Hamptons. It's about a machine that allegedly operated for decades, with Diddy at the center and a rotating cast of enablers keeping it running. And machines like that don't go down without taking a few people with them. Now, let's talk about the tapes.
So we just got this new audio from the Diddy trial, and it is pretty explosive. This is audio of a voicemail that Diddy left to the Jane Doe who's been testifying in this trial for the last couple days. And he sounds really annoyed. He's talking about her maybe giving him the silent treatment, and his response is, I got a busy life, I can't be dealing with your silent treatment, and we got to keep it.
The ones everyone's whispering about, the ones the FBI allegedly seized during those raids. If they exist, they don't just show Diddy's alleged crimes, they show the complicity of everyone around him, the security guards who looked the other way, the assistants who arranged the private encounters, the other artists who participated, either willingly or under duress. And if those tapes ever see the light of day, it won't just be Diddy on trial, it'll be an entire industry. Because let's be real, Diddy didn't operate in a vacuum. He had help, he had protection, and he had a network of people who knew exactly what was happening and chose to stay silent. Until now. QE's decision to speak out might be the spark, but the fire is already spreading. Other Bad Boy alumni are reportedly in talks with lawyers, weighing their own stories against the legal risks. Former employees are coming forward with details about the freak-off culture, where boundaries were erased and refusal meant exile. And then there's the email, the one Quay says left him terrified, the one that allegedly referenced sacrifices. If that email exists, and if it's as damning as he claims, it's not just evidence, it's a roadmap to other victims, other locations, other crimes. And the people who have that roadmap, they're not just sitting on it anymore, they're starting to talk. But here's the twist, the more people talk, the more dangerous it becomes. Because Diddy's empire wasn't just built on music, it was built on leverage, on secrets, on the kind of information that can destroy careers, marriages, reputations. And the people who held those secrets, they're not all saints. Some of them have their own skeletons. Some of them benefited from the system. Some of them might still be protecting it, even as it crumbles. Which means Quay's bravery could come at a cost. Because in a world where loyalty was enforced with fear, the people who break ranks don't just get blacklisted, they get targeted. And with Diddy's trial still months away, the question isn't just who else will speak out, it's who will try to silence them first. And that's when the texts turned into something darker. Not just warnings, not just threats, but offers. They're paying people to stay quiet, one industry insider claimed. Not just Diddy's team, the labels, the lawyers, the people who have the most to lose. Because here's the thing about scandals like this. They don't just expose the guilty, they expose the system. And the system, it's fighting back. Hard. So, where does that leave us? With a music mogul in jail, a growing list of accusers, and a federal case that's about to pull back the curtain on one of the darkest chapters in entertainment history. But more than that, it leaves us with a choice. Because right now, someone out there is sitting on a tape, or a contract, or a text message, or a memory, and they're deciding whether to stay silent, or to finally tell the truth. And if they do, this isn't just a scandal anymore, it's an earthquake. And that's when we have to ask, how many more names are on those tapes? Because if QA's story is just the beginning, the real question isn't if more victims will come forward, it's when. And trust us, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. Stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, the truth doesn't just come out, it explodes. We'll be watching. Until next time.